Welcome back, everybody, to our sixth day here of the Waterkant Festival 2020 live stream here, live from the MFT5 in Kiel. It's our sixth day. We're of 3 weeks in total. Until the 26th of June, we will be live streaming more than 100 sessions to you, categorized in 10 different tracks. And to connect to other festival participants and the speakers, please also join our MetaMost channel, which we will post into the chat during our session. So yes, please make sure you join there. But yeah, today is a very special day. We already had 2 sessions in the topic of startups. We learned about impact funding. And now actually we will move on to our third guest today within the track of futures design. And in this track, we want to explore some ways in which we as individuals, organizations, and society are needing to transform to create a better future. Which tools and which models can we use for that? And in our first week, we were looking mainly at the individual. And now we will start also looking into organizational models. And I'm very happy to discuss this question now with our third guest of today, which is Antti Virolainen live from Finland. There he is already. And
hi there.
Yes, Antti is the co-founder of Sharetribe. I'll just share a few more words on you, Antti, quickly before we start. Antti started his entrepreneurial journey fresh out of college 10 years ago, motivated about changing the way how people own things and encouraging them to share more. These days, his main passions still revolve around ownership, but now especially about the ownership of companies and how our default model currently is broken and how it could be improved. Yes, so Antti, I'm super happy that you are joining us live now from Finland and that you will share with us a bit more about your story with Sharetribe, how you have been transitioning to a steward-owned company, and how you can share maybe also a few more details about that model. This is all happening under this nice title of Hacking Capitalism with Cap Returns and Steward-ownership. So we are very excited to hear a bit more about your story now and to be inspired maybe to take on the courage to really take our own ownership. And please post your questions to all of you viewers wherever you are joining us from right now, because after this nice presentation that Antti will have with us now, we will have some space for your questions. So yes, make sure you post them and then we can come back to them later. But now, Antti, I want to pass the word over to you.
Thank you, Viola, and greetings to everybody in Germany and anywhere else where you're listening. Broadcasting from the middle of Finland in a wooden cabin, trying to find the best spot for the mobile internet. I hope the picture is coming and voice is coming through well. Although I also thought I'll give you a chance to rest your eyes a bit before diving in the more traditional presentation, as I believe if you're like me, you've been staring the screen a lot this spring. Before going to any slides, I'd take you to a short mental journey. So unless you're listening while driving or something like that, if it's safe for you to close your eyes, I'd invite you to do so. Take a relaxed position in your chair or wherever you are and relax for a while. Break from the screen, break from watching inspiring festival presentations. And I'd like you to imagine yourself for a while in your inner space and actually also in the outer space, in a big, huge spaceship on an interstellar journey. A journey so long that it takes centuries to reach any destination. So the ship has been designed to be a home for multiple generations. And you're one of the generations born in the middle. So you can imagine living on a spaceship with thousands of people, with beautiful inside gardens that are recycling all the material. There's nothing coming into the ship or out from the ship in space, so all the water, all the materials get recycled. There is enough food, enough gardens, enough supply for everybody's needs. And people are being literally born and dying on the spaceship. And as you know, people, if we get our basic needs met, we start observing other problems, next things we could solve, how we could improve our lives. So this is also the way on the spaceship. People start ideating new appliances, new solutions, new machines that make the life on board nicer, more comfortable, more exciting. And they are something nice. It makes the journey nice. Willing to give their resources, their food, or some money in the ship's internal credit system to those inventors. And they even start having rules that if somebody makes an invention that helps others, they can decide the price that others need to pay for use the machine, for example. And it feels very fair for everybody. And there are a lot of nice inventions made. For example, one guy builds a machine that makes the recycled water taste a lot better. People already got used to the little bit muddy taste on the spaceship. But with this new machine, it really tastes like a spring water, really, really good. Even if those people never tasted spring water as they are born on the spaceship. But they're very happy with that, and the inventor is only taking a modest price for the invention. So sooner, in a couple of years, it has spread so that everybody on the spaceship is drinking this great purified water from this machine. Then when the inventor gets old, he wants to sell the rights to the invention to a group of people who collect a pile of resources and money and give it to the inventor, who can then live in a very nice star view cabin for the rest of his life. And the people who bought it, they calculated that if we raise a little bit the price for the purified water, we can pay back this investment in just a couple of years. And so the system goes, inventions get made, and the most successful ones are really changing the way of life on board the spaceship. And the people behind those inventions are getting richer and richer. And while there originally was enough resources for everybody, people have gotten so used to these life-enhancing inventions that they are no longer even remembering that there is also this mud-tasting free water available. So they feel that the life on board has gotten quite expensive. And it starts to be actually a struggle for the poor people, because there is a limited amount of resources, the same amount that they left with from Earth. And now 8 people on board own the same amount as the poorer half of the crew of thousands of people. But that's the rules they've come up with. So instead of trying to change them, most people just try to play along. They try to be the inventor of the next unicorn machine that will make them rich. And they pool their resources and borrow money from others to come up with the best idea that would make them and maybe their children rich. And as we approach the end of this mental journey, I would like you to think that if you would be starting a long, long interstellar flight, would this kind of environment be the one you would like to travel in? Would you like to play this game where you might be among the super rich who enjoy the star views and great food, or among the people who need to struggle and try to invent, gamble with different inventions, maybe get rich, or maybe stay poor and struggling? And actually, you don't need to answer that question, because you are already on board on our spaceship Earth. And you can also start slowly making your return towards this place, time and place, back to your body and back from the mental journey. And whenever it feels good for you, you can open your eyes. And welcome back to Earth. Our spaceship is a little bit bigger than in this mental journey, hosting millions of people. and many gardens, but still the story was obviously inspired by this blue vessel we are all traveling. And as Marshall McLuhan said, there are no passengers on spaceship Earth, only crew. And that is a good thing and a bad thing. It means we cannot just sit back and relax and gather food from the trees, or maybe we could, because it seems like most of the other species here are doing that. But anyway, we've built kind of rules in society and etc. So it feels like we need to be playing by the rules of this game. But actually, we are the crew. Like all the rules that are made here are made by humans. So we are the ones who can also change them. Maybe not alone, but it's still up to us completely. And yeah, this brings me back to my entrepreneurial journey and how we got started about thinking of these kind of questions. Like in the early days, we were just playing with the rules that we saw in the society. But as we get further and further on the path of entrepreneurship, we started seeing that this is not a good game. There are major flaws in the game, and I think the spaceship metaphor can put it in a little bit smaller context, where we do see that it's not so nice that it's the actual statistics from the Earth that 8 richest people own the same amount of resources, same amount of money as the other half, the poorer half of the world's population. So I think the question is, it's a good system where we can encourage inventions by rewarding the inventors, but is it going too far? Do we really need more inventions, or should we start focusing on something else? And the main question here is, what is enough? And the model that I'm going to talk about today, steward ownership, focused on, or it's maybe not focused, but it forces the organizations to ask that question, and the founders, what is enough? So I hope I can make all of you think also, what is enough? What's your situation in life now, right now? If you're working in an enterprise, or if you are a founder of one, what is your current situation? What do you still want to achieve? And I'll hop now much lower level on Earth, the online marketplaces, because that is where my entrepreneurial journey started 10 years ago. We were building in a research project, a marketplace for our university in Helsinki, Finland. It looked like this, great designs from 10 years ago. And we were really motivated by the sharing economy, and also by the startup hype, the stories from the Silicon Valley, that we built something cool online and we changed the world and get rich in the process. And this seemed to be the way, very exciting path forward. And in the sharing economy, we were mostly motivated by that it allows people to save money and earn money. They can sell their own stuff, they can rent their property, and if they are, like in Airbnb, people are maximizing the use of the underutilized asset. So in our spaceship, we need to create less homes, less cars, less tools, if people are renting and sharing their properties. So it's also good for the environment. And as a third thing, people get to meet each other. So the sharing economy is also enhancing the community. Like if you used Airbnb as an example, you'll be probably chatting with the homeowners instead of the hotel desk workers. So there are nice benefits in this. And we were really enthusiastic about this win-win-win deal. And we struggled in the beginning because it was slow, time-consuming, and difficult to build these online marketplaces. And even though we were enthusiastic about the Silicon Valley model, which says raise venture capital, grow fast, go big or go home, we tried that, but especially in the early years, nobody wanted to invest. So, and we didn't get much clients. So we couldn't follow that Silicon Valley path, even if we wanted to, which was maybe a good case now when I think about it back. But as we had find out the difficulty of building marketplaces at that time, and we came up with some working software for that, in 2014, we launched like a pivoted version where we started helping other entrepreneurs solve the same problem. And now I can happily say that with Sharetribe, it's now one of the easiest ways to build new online marketplaces, because even without technical skills, you can get started with a working online marketplace where people can come there, sell or rent out their stuff or their services, get paid, and the marketplace owner can also get paid in the process. So like Airbnb model, which can be done without any programming, and then people can also extend later on and hire developers if they validate the concept and want to build in onwards. So we've been actually able to make really multiple nice concepts come true. For example, here a bike rental scheme in Oxford campus in UK, and in France there is an Airbnb for swimming pools called Swimmy. In Australia, some bigger companies even are using our tools. For example, Canon building a rental place so that professional photographers can rent the gear instead of owning it all. And also services, like in UK, you can the professional photographers can find work through this marketplace, and people needing a photographer for their wedding can find the professionals here. So the tools are these days used for many different purposes. And the size of the company, just to give you some idea before going into the details of the ownership model, is currently that we are empowering over 1,000 of these kind of marketplaces all around the world with 20 people team, and with the annual revenue rate about 2 million. And growing here in 10 years is not the rocket speed that the venture capitalist would be wishing for, but not too bad either. So there is some business in what we are doing, which I think makes the story a bit more interesting on how we managed to make a quite big change in the ownership model once we encountered troubles. And when I talk about the troubles, I'm talking about the so-called dark side of the sharing economy. When we were working, trying to help new online marketplaces be built, we started seeing that these inspiring examples that we had been following since the beginning started to get more and more bad press. And well, I guess most of you have heard about the problems of the so-called gig economy and how it's sometimes overriding all the good work that the worker unions have been doing over the years. So we were worried. It was not all sunshine and roses with the sharing economy. And we were wondering that what in our position we could do to help. And we realized that in many of these cases, this is related to the ownership model. Because many times there are a bunch of idealistic owners who have started with the motivation to do something big and change the world. And they follow the typical path of raising a lot of capital, and they sell part of their company, and they at the same time they sell part of their decision-making power. So sooner or later they are in a situation where the investors are controlling more of the decision-making power than the actual founders. So like in the spaceship story, the original inventor of the water filtering machine wasn't anymore able to decide the pricing. It was the new investors, and their motivation to join was that they put in money and they get more money back in the future, which is basically the logic of investing. So noticing all this, we shifted our mission that instead of only boosting sharing economy, we want to also make it more democratic, the platform ownership. Because we saw that if there are also other types of ownerships in the game, not only the big venture-funded giants, there could be like cooperatives or locally owned marketplaces where local workers can offer their work. Or there could be like taxi drivers joining their forces together and owning a cooperative. And through that cooperative, they could be having an online platform where people can book taxi drives. And that, I think, could compete very well with Uber, because I think many clients would like to use the locally owned version if, and here's the big if the user experience is as good as with Uber. So it needs to be really smooth and easy. So that means they need to invest a lot in the product development. And that's where we saw our opportunity, that as we already have the software, we can make it affordably available to anyone. So they need less money for the software development, so they need less investments, and that way they need to give less control to the investors, and that should make the sharing economy look a more diverse place. So instead of the giants over there would also be non-profits, co-ops, governmental organizations running these marketplaces. And why we were excitedly talking about this story, for example, in the platform cooperative conferences in the US, there were some clever people asking that, what about us? What prevents us from becoming one of, here, what prevents us from becoming one of them? Because we had taken in some venture capital. We are a for-profit company, or were, and we were having certain amount of control to the software of those platforms. And even if we are a bunch of idealistic founders, as we also felt, we knew that if we keep raising more money, then at some point, and we even knew that it's in 1 or 2 funding rounds, we would lose the majority of votes to the investors. And we knew that then we might end up being similar story as what we have already seen, that regardless of the starting point, sooner or later, the companies become more investor controlled, or they become public, and then the stock owners own the company. And that we've seen to have bad side effects. And I want to be clear here that it's not that I would be saying that the investors are bad people. Like often we think that it's the rich people, they just are greedy and want more money. But actually, if we look at the statistics, it's a very small percentage of the shares of companies that are owned by rich individuals. And a staggering 87% of the company ownership is owned by the pension funds and insurance companies. And that really made me think, because it's not the greedy people, it's people in those pension funds that are sitting there at their work and trying to do the work best. They are not investing their own money, they're actually investing our money. Because if you're in a Western country and you're working, some of your money goes to these pension funds. And I guess you hope those pension fund managers to get a really nice return on investment on your money so that you can have a nice pension. And yeah, this graph really made me think. This is picked from Armin Steuernagel's TEDx talk, which I really recommend to check if you're interested in this. But this made me think that it's not the bad people, it's the bad rules of the game. And then we go on to the real beef. How can we change the rules of the game? And in 2017, when we started thinking about this, that, okay, we don't want to follow this path anymore. What can we do? We started learning that we were not alone. And one really cool movement that I also recommend to check out is Zebra company movement, which is born as an alternative to the unicorn ideal, because it feels like everybody's chasing, running in the race, wanting to be the next unicorn. And there are these sayings like move fast and break things. But going back to the question, what is enough? I think we don't need more unicorns, but we need more like collaborative animals like zebras that are black and white and work for real world problems and are actually really existing ones. So that's also started in 2017. This is a blog post in Medium that kind of started the movement, and now there is a lot of things going on online and offline. So it's a cool thing to check out if you are interested. There is an event coming up in September or October in the US. And another thing we found out in 2017 is the steward ownership. And now we're getting to the more detailed things. So hopefully up to this point, I've been able to convey the message and the story and why I think the ownership matters, and why I hope you would also give it a thought and see that there are alternatives to the default logic of building companies. And even if you are now working in a company that does have venture capital investments in, it's possible to change. So we did also have, I think, maybe 30 something persons owned by the investors, and we managed to still make the shift. So I'll get down to the details soon. The steward ownership is not a model invented by us. It's the term is started by a group in Germany, actually, so close to most of the audience, I guess. And there's a group called Purpose Network that I'll also link to in the end. And they started looking for the problems in the current economy. So they made similar observations, but they also see great examples of companies where the founder donated majority of the votes into a charitable foundation. So there was still an owner, but the owner was not looking for more profits, which is kind of the default mode of owners these days. And as some of these companies, for example, Zeiss, the optics company, has been running over 100 years, there is plenty of data to show that the steward ownership model has actually been doing very well. So they have been able to retain the people very well, give money to the good causes, put a lot of effort in green thinking and local universities, etc., etc. And there are other big examples like Bosch and Carl Lewis in the UK. And inspired by this, the Purpose Network made a model called steward ownership, so that companies like us, like small startup in Finland, could also adapt this without starting our own foundations. And we were excited because this allowed us to give a binding promise to everybody, like to the people in the conferences who asked, like, okay, what prevents us selling a majority of decision-making power to someone else tomorrow and that person doing nasty decisions? And nothing prevented at that time, but the steward ownership model has few voluntarily taken limitations that the company can decide to do. So in order to do this kind of shift, you'll need to get basically everybody on board to approve or be in agreement. So this is easier in the beginning when you have less owners than in the later stage. But if you can make everybody agree, you could do this at any point. And one clever thing here is that the voting rights are held only by active team members. So this goes around the problem where the voting power slowly but gradually and surely flows to the people who are not really connected to the everyday actions of the company, but are in it for the investment. So as a steward-owned company, we can still take in investments, but the investors don't get the voting rights. And this I'll get back to later. There are downsides to this naturally, but with this agreement, this really nicely protects being mission-driven in the long term. And in our version of the steward ownership, we also ruled out selling the company or taking it to public. So this means that Sharetribe tomorrow cannot be owned by a different set of principles, and we as founders can get rich overnight. So that's a quite significant decision for somebody to do if they started their entrepreneurship with the unicorn chasing path. And as the title of the speech also said, the capital returns in this model are capped. And I think this is one of the really important ideas here. And this goes down to the question, what is enough? And if we go back to the spaceship a little bit, and if I would be the person inventing this nice water purifying machine, and somebody would come to ask me that, hey, this is great invention. If we commercialize this, would it be enough for you to earn like 2 million? Or do you want eternal right to charge whatever you want from this? And if whenever your machine, water purifying company makes profits, you can always get part of those profits. And then when you die, you can give that to the children, and then it goes in your family, or you can sell it to whoever gives you most money. And naturally, the latter one is true on Earth in most countries today. But and nobody asks this question, But if I would get asked that question, and I would potentially think that, yeah, 2 million, for example, could be enough, or 3 or 10 or whatever I feel. I don't need this eternal right to charge from this water purifier. Like, I can be happy, I can get rich in a small scale, and then go on to other inventions or whatever I want to do. Like, it sounds fair to me. But now we don't ask this question unless we become steward-owned company, because here in steward ownership, you decide what's the maximum return on investment, and this goes for everybody, for the founders, for every owner, investors, early employees, etc. And in our case, this led to really, really interesting discussions of what is enough, and then how to balance things with the feedback from the employees and from the investors, who also have dealing with different positions, etc. But we managed, it's possible, and now there is a clear cap. So we cannot sell the company, but we can pay from the profits of the company to all the owners. And for example, in my case, I could earn almost 2 million from these profits. But if that I someday get all that, then there won't be any more capital returns from the company. I can still work there, I can still get the salary, but there is a cap of the capital gains. And I think that's good. And I think it's enough. And let's see what I think in 10 years. But I think it's good to do this decision also to protect ourselves from our own greediness. Because when the pie grows bigger, then also the small slice might not be enough anymore. And the final point is that if we could tomorrow change back to being a normal company, this wouldn't be so credible promise. So it's a permanent change. And it's we got from the Purpose Network, we got their model of how they did that change in Germany. And with the help of a lawyer, we adapted. So now there is a Finnish law version of a steward-owned company. But they have plenty of resources for many countries. So if you're interested, you can contact me or the Purpose Network. And let's see how we're doing with the time. I think I don't go now into the details of the voting rights so that we have more time for the questions. But I'll show quickly that in most countries, you can have plenty of different share classes. So we have separate share classes for the active team members. We have one for the Purpose Foundation, and this is just a technical thing that prevents us from shifting back to normal company. And then on the right side, we have profit shares that have no voting rights. So these are the ones we sell to investors. And as you maybe note on the left side, it says no profit rights. So this separation of decision-making and profit earning is very important because that way the same people are not incentivized to make the decisions in order to maximize the profit. However, during the transition, we have so-called delayed compensation. So, for example, I'm also owning the D shares, which the company can pay back someday, and that way I get kind of the delayed compensation, which I mentioned earlier. But for the investors who joined after this in 2018 crowdfunding, for them the maximum cap is that they can earn the invested sum back 5 times. So if they invested 2,000, they can earn 10,000 maximum. And yeah, in 2018, with this model, we shifted to the model and we did a crowdfunding campaign. There were some institutional investors and funds and some angel investors and a lot of individual people. So over 400 different people. And I think this was also a clear success or sign that people are interested in this steward ownership model, and they also want to invest with this model. They want to think what their money is doing and empower this kind of a new economy that is nudging the capitalism towards the right direction. And the quick summary of the pros and cons we've noticed so far with this model is that this limits our fundraising possibilities. We can't raise from traditional venture capitalists anymore, and some angels also are not interested in this kind of model. And we cannot use ownership option type equity bonus to compensate for like a special people that we hire, but we could still pay good salary and some bonuses as long as those also are not used to circumvent the rules. And as said, we cannot get rich overnight, and now we know what's the total cap of that. But on the pro side, on the good side, this really keeps the purpose always on a priority, and the profits are just the means to an end. So I think now that we are in between for-profit and non-profit company, we can do profit, we can pay to the risk takers, but it's always capped. So when the cap is reached, we are taking more steps towards the non-profit. And yeah, said this is a binding promise, so people can really rely on this. It's not that we are idealistic and give false promises. And we can always control our own destiny. So even if we raise more funding, we are not selling the decision making outside the company. And if somebody from the team leaves, like let's say I leave, I need to give the voting shares to the others who are in the team. So it's never outside controlled. And after everything gets agreed with investors and founders, then the incentives are very much aligned. The company needs to make profit so that it can pay back up to the capped returns limits are reached. But there is no arguments about whether we should sell the company or keep growing, which can often happen between investors and founders. And overall, I feel that this is kind of these actions where you can be the change that you want to see in the world. I feel that if all companies would use this model, it could allow people to earn good enough to be motivated, but it would take a lot away from this game that encourages eternal profit maximization. So for the pros and cons, we have been very happy with this change for the past 2 years. And if this made you interested about the topic, I'm here soon to answer your questions. And if we run out of time in the session, I'll be in the Mattermost chat. And also one resource I want to give here is the Purpose Network. So they help the pioneers who want to do this change. And as you see in the corner, they have also German and Spanish and English version of their site. So you can go to purpose-economy.org. And there's a really great group of nice people who helped us a lot in this transition. And here I wrap my presentation part. We still have several minutes for questions. And as said, then we can continue on the chat side. So thank you for the attention. And here you see also my details on our website if you want to take a note and contact us later.
Amazing. Thank you, Antti. That was such an interesting presentation, and it's really great to learn about this model, that it exists, that there is companies that are transitioning to it, and a network that pushes a model, a very holistic model that is quite needed maybe in our times right now. I actually do have some questions for you now. And if you at home might have some questions now as well, please keep posting them in the chat. We can pick them up live also. And yes, also in 10 minutes, Antti, you will be with us on our Mattermost channel, which is amazing. Thank you. So actually, I was wondering personally, like, is the steward-owned company model actually a legal form? So if I would start wanting to create my own company right now, could I just choose to become a steward-owned company, like a for-profit or non-for-profit?
Good question. And the answer is not yet. I don't think there is any country where this is a legal form for a company. So it's kind of a hack, as also mentioned in the title. We're kind of hacking capitalism here, playing within the rules of existing company law. And few of the tools, as I mentioned, you can make multiple share classes. So we use that. And then for this permanent change, we have solved it so that we have this one veto share that we give to a foundation. And in the foundation's rules, it says that we don't take part in any voting, except if this company is wanting to remove the steward ownership model, and then we vote against it. And then in our rules, it says that if you want to change these rules, this veto share must be for it. So it's kind of a hack, a little bit complex. And in Germany, actually, the Purpose Network is doing now work, also like a political work, trying to get politicians to support the idea that many things would be better if this would be a legal form right away. It would be easier to get started. People would know about it more. Because as in my examples, we didn't know we could choose a middle ground. It was like either for profit all the way or non-profit all the way. But I think this kind of being able to pay to risk takers, but with the capped returns is like a really nice middle ground. So I think, yeah, hopefully it will be a legal form someday so that people really consider this option when starting new companies.
Yeah, great. I have actually 2 or 3 more questions, but we only have around 5 minutes. So just to let you know, first I would like to keep actually a little bit on that part of how transitioning to become this company, and a bit more on the personal, on the individual level. Like, what are the conditions that the employees also would need? You know, like what is in the sense of like risk, or maybe investment themselves, or also responsibility. What is needed kind of to really be able to transition? Is it maybe also just like the inner condition that needs to be there, or are there some people that might not want to do that because they need more security, or is that even a question? So yeah, what did you experience?
Yeah, good question. We did have, especially thinking from the team and employee point of view here now, we did have really interesting discussions with the whole team at that time. So a couple of Friday afternoons were spent like with kind of a Q&A sessions, the team asking us as founders like, okay, what is this idea you are very enthusiastic about? And then we answered what we could, and then we wrote down the rest, and then we asked the purpose network like, hey, how does this actually work? So getting very well informed of what this means, what are the limitations, what this enables, is very good, so that there is no regrets afterwards. And yeah, you mentioned the security, and this might feel like a scary thing in that sense that it limits your possible sources of funding in the future. And naturally, if you're an entrepreneur, you might want to maximize that. But as I also spoke about the downsides of raising funding with the traditional model, it doesn't happen if you take one round of funding from venture capital, etc. But it's good to discuss what's the lost security there, because often the venture capitals also expect further rounds, etc., etc. So having these discussions early on is also forcing everybody to ask, what's my motivation here? What would be enough for me? So I think among founders, that's a really good discussion. And for example, with the employees, we had discussion of what's the worth of the employee options, because we have been using that model, and then we need to transition that. So they're also trying to find the right level so that it still felt motivating for employees, but then also for other owners or investors, it didn't feel like too big valuation of those shares. But we managed to come up with a solution where the employee stock is actually paid back with a bigger price than all the other shares. So it kind of emphasizes the small owners. I'm very happy about that.
Thank you. All right. And I will just quickly try to take on 2 more questions from the chat, actually. And for the rest, please
I'll try to be shorter.
Just come over to Mattermost then, because we have another session at 5. That's why I have to keep it short. So the first question would be, let's take the example of Uber. Who's the steward in case the taxi driver doesn't have money to invest? I try to understand of what's new in your concept. In Germany, you also have voting and non-voting shares. I assume it is just the decision of founders where to go. So who's the steward in case the taxi driver doesn't have money to invest?
Yeah. So that's a good question. And the steward ownership could be arranged in different ways. So it could be like I was talking about the taxi drivers and suggesting that a cooperative model where each taxi driver would put in a small sum, and there would be a big pool of taxi drivers, and then everybody would have one vote. That could be a way to get together some amount of money without individual taxi driver needing a lot, but still they would have the vote. Naturally, you could do a normal, like a limited company, where not all the people who work there are owners. So there could be a group of stewards. And most steward ownership companies work that way, that there is a group of people who have been in the company for a longer time who actually hold the majority of the voting rights. And then there are some who split them very democratically. I think Soul Bottles is a German company, and they do a system that when a person has been there for a while, then they can earn the voting share, and then spreads quite democratically. So I think the company can decide. And we only have a handful of early people have all the majority of the voting rights, and we are planning to do maybe something like Soul Bottles, but we haven't completely figured out how we want to do it. But it's basically up to the company. Who are the stewards, who decides.
Thank you, Antti. Great. There were 2 or 3 more questions, but actually I think we have to close the session now to prepare for our next session, which will start at 5.
Yeah.
Antti, did you want to say one more thing?
Yeah, I remember the second part of this question, just like what's new there, because you could have these different share classes. But I think here, committing the company so that these rules can't be changed and that the voting power actually can't be sold outside in any situation. That's kind of the new idea. And also the capped returns. So those are more rarely used, even if multiple share classes are used.
In there.
Okay,
great. Yeah, I think there's much more again really to learn about it and to discuss, and it's really exciting movement, and so great that you're taking on this journey and sharing it with us today. Antti, I wish you all the best on that journey, and keep inspiring us. And it's great to connect to the Purpose Economy Network as well, and hopefully next time you can be maybe with us as well here physically again. Yes, so if you have any more questions, or if I wasn't able to name those questions here right now, please move over to the Mattermost channel, and Antti will be there for a bit longer for Q&A. And yes, so thank you again so much, Antti, for being with us. And now we will move on with a great session in the topic of AI with Carla Husted, who will talk about the relationship with AI. And then we will come to a big highlight also of our festival here tonight. Daniel Günther will be joining us, and we will do a virtual walk through our exhibition, which we are building next door. It's very exciting. And afterwards, closing this day with a session on the future of education, talking about the potentials of online courses. So stay with us, just another 10 minutes, and then we will move on with our next session. And yes, goodbye, and thanks to you, Antti, again, and have a good time. Stay safe in Finland. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.